information call. As you just heard, we do record the meetings, and again, for anybody who's new to our calls, the reason for that is because we do recognize that today at 2 o'clock is not necessarily a day someone can make. So with the recordings, we will send that out to all of our customer administrators and content managers so that they do have an opportunity to hear the call. Very quickly, we do enjoy when folks participate. So please, by all means, you know, unmute yourself, come on and talk. We would appreciate that, or use the chat feature. That's always welcome too. Rebecca does a great job of being able to kind of monitor the chat. She'll highlight some information throughout. So that's always very helpful when we can do that too. So I am getting a little bit of feedback right now. So I'm not sure if everybody's got, yeah, it's helpful that when people are speaking, if you can just unmute or mute and unmute, that's very helpful. Again, if you go down, scroll down to the bottom of your screen, you're gonna see where you can turn your video on and off. And thanks to everybody for putting your videos on today. That's always good to see faces. So our call today will really be about the 5 languages of appreciation. And we're excited to kind of talk a little high level about that, but also take and think about, wow, how do we take those languages of appreciation and now think about that, applying it to the DSP Appreciation Week, or whenever you're talking with individuals. So we'll be touching on those 2 topics throughout the session today, talk about a few reminders, and then discuss our next call. So that's really our agenda. And again, we just want to welcome anybody who's with us. These are the states that we're currently in with Quillo. And as I mentioned, we'll welcome anybody as they join the call. So I'm going to go ahead and now turn it over to John, and he's going to go through the 5 languages of appreciation.
Well, thank you guys so much. And since, you know, Andrea, just a little introduction, Andrea's part of Project START and doing some really amazing work with organizations in Texas and North Carolina and around the country. Jenny is new. They just decided to get involved yesterday. And so Jenny's from Madison, Wisconsin. So Andrea will let you 2 connect here, and we look forward to CLC becoming involved, and it's exciting, and we can all learn from one another. And if you haven't learned about Project START, great person to connect with Andrea. So she's got some wonderful videos on the app as well.
Wonderful.
Well, we wanted to just really start off with talking a little bit about what are the last 5 things that, and this can be much more conversational here as we get more people joining in, but what are the last 5 things you have done to show appreciation to your staff, either as a group or individually? Do either of you want to just jump out and say some suggestions, things you've done that have worked, that have extended appreciation back to people on your staff?
Well, one thing that we do at START is well, 2 things, just quick things. We often send like a Friday shout out, and anyone can send it. So sometimes it's me. It's specific to one of the staff that I supervise. Sometimes it's my supervisor shouting out to somebody else. So it's just kind of something that's part of the culture of our program to do. And then the other thing that we do is to show appreciation is we do strength spotting. So we identify specific strengths that we see our staff demonstrate, and we kind of call it out in the moment, and show people that we recognized it right then and there.
Great. Okay. And we just had David join from VOA. So David, glad you could be on with us. Jenny, what are the kinds of things you guys have done at CLC around appreciation?
Currently, I have a letter that I sent out to family members and people that are associated with our organization, asking them to share what they're grateful for. And that's really successful. That goes along with our annual appeal for donations. So they can donate and write a letter, or they can do one or the other. So that's been really successful. I use those during DSP week on social media and in daily emails that get sent directly to employees. And then after that DSP week, we actually send that handwritten note to the person that it was meant for.
Very nice. Well, that ties in something a little bit later. We couldn't have asked for a better intro to that. You know, one of the things that I'm sharing this book that it's a really great read. If you haven't read it, you can also check it out in the library and get the audio version while you're driving. But Gary Chapman and another author did the original 5 languages of love for couples. And they were asked to put that same concept to work in the workplace. And one of the things that was really interesting in this is their study, and this was for business. One of the really interesting things was the question of perception. And an example of that question of perception was managers were asked, why did people leave your organization? And 80% of managers felt that people left to get jobs for more money. But then the exit interviews of people who left, done by an independent exit interview company, so you're not talking to your boss, 80% of people left because they didn't feel appreciated. And you could argue those numbers or that exit interviews aren't accurate, but what he pointed out is the perception difference between what leaders felt and what employees felt. And so he was motivated to take his concept around couples and translate that to the workforce. So this is really a synopsis of their work that we're going to walk through in a little bit just to share with you. And is anybody familiar with this work or Gary Chapman's work, earlier work that?
Yeah, I've heard of the languages of love. I don't know them, but I've heard of them. And I just was going to say, this is so timely because I was just talking to another member of my team around developing some leadership resources for folks. So it's like perfect timing, John.
Well, good. Well, and we're just going to walk through these with some things that each one of them, and his premise is that each of us have a primary language of appreciation. And it's different. And then we usually have a secondary language. And what's important for leaders to understand is the same language doesn't work for everyone. And so as you begin getting to know your people, you begin figuring out what are those opportunities to use those 5 languages and what works for people. So the first one, and the most common one, is words of affirmation. And when we talk about words of appreciation or affirmation, it can be to the individual or a group. Giving out an employee of the month is a common appreciation, putting it in the newsletter, putting it on Facebook, giving that out. And the people where words of appreciation are very important, or their primary language, these become very important. It also can be that very personal thank you that is really important. And around all of them, sincerity is very important. Have you ever had the feeling of somebody asks you how you're feeling and you answer them honestly and you say, boy, I'm really having a tough day, and they automatically are on autopilot and they go, oh, that's good, that they're expecting everybody to say, I'm fine. So when he looked at this, he also talked about when you find folks that this is their primary language, you also learn different dialects. And what he means by dialect are not a different language such as French or Chinese, but is it that personal connection with them of we appreciate what you've done and knowing what they're dealing with and what they're going through? Is it this level to the team and that it's the group that they are part of, that you develop different ways of sharing that with folks that relates back to them? And this becomes a way to take that moment to say thank you. And that thank you could be, again, passing somebody in the hallway and just stopping them for a moment to notice the good job they did. And again, knowing that that person really, that's their primary language. So as an individual or to a group as a team or personally, making sure somebody knows that you appreciate what they did and maybe they missed their kid's band performance and you acknowledge that you made a difference in doing that. One of the things he talks about is how do you target people specifically around this? And begin thinking whether you are looking at a group of folks, individuals that are new to the organization, or maybe trying some things randomly. And we'll talk about some ideas that he comes up with the book, that it's not just your immediate circle who it's easier to say thank you to, but those folks that are distant, that work out in the community, that don't get that connection. And I thought back to 2 stories that we've learned over the first year with Quillo, and that is, so many of our staff in the field felt that when they are being contacted by their supervisor, it means something went wrong or they're in trouble. And so this idea of how do we send appreciation in a meaningful way to folks whose general connection is one of, well, I only get heard from when there's something that went wrong. So finding those words of appreciation for folks. The other thing he says is, if this isn't your primary language, this can really backfire on you. So you have somebody stand up in a large staff meeting, a team meeting, and praise them with words in front of everybody else. If this isn't their primary language of appreciation, it is actually painful for them to go through that. And so you have to be careful. Giving somebody DSP of the month or DSP of the year, when that isn't their primary language, actually works against you as you've been thinking about it. So we'll talk a little bit later. We have an example of a simple way of a quick little survey people can do that is not exhaustive, it's free, but it gives you a way of testing your own words of appreciation and languages and which ones relate to your primary language. Go ahead, keep it. We'll change to the next one. The second language is for people that are not into words, they are into acts of service. What is much more important to them is not that thank you that you received, but it's more of that act of help when somebody notices you're really swamped, you're behind in your work, you've got this big project coming up, you need help with a shift, that there is some act of helping people through a difficult situation. How do we do that in a very spread apart organization and beginning to feel that? One suggestion, I was testing this out with one folks, is we have an organization where all the managers, including the CEO, help cover shifts. That if they're asking staff to do double shifts, every one of the department heads is trained and certified to work as a DSP. So at least once a month, the CEO is covering a shift. And I said to her, you know, it would be a really cool thing, not to give yourself a pat on the back, but saying, you know, if you recorded 1 minute at 6 in the morning coming off a shift, and shared, I was at such and such house last night, and it reminded me how important your work is. As I covered a shift for one of our folks that couldn't be there, I just know what you do makes such a difference. That people knowing that you're engaged in that, or sharing that with the group about what do we learn from what our people are going through every day. So an act of service is, for some people, their primary language, and how that makes it real for them, that you're not just saying something to me, you're doing something that helps me out. The third area is quality time. And this is this question of, I don't need to have you give me thanks or praise. What I really crave is getting 10 or 15 minutes one-on-one with you as my supervisor to just ask me, how are things going? What do you think about this? What do you think we should do? There was a fellow who was written up in the New York Times that he was going to make personal contact with 4 employees a day, with the goal of spending 10 minutes with each one of them on the phone every day. Not as good as in person, but they were a company with people all around New York State. That the idea that he was setting up this schedule that he was going to call people to get 10 minutes with them over the phone, listening to them one-on-one. When you start thinking about people that want quality time, if that is their primary language, that's going to be really effective. If it's not, they may be really nervous and very uncomfortable. Why is the boss sitting down with me and making me go through this? So again, it's beginning to learn what your people crave and what is important to them and knowing them. The fourth area is tangible rewards. There are some people that, again, the first 3, just like water off a duck's back, don't really care. They want to see something tangible. And it isn't just always a raise. And the key to tangible rewards is knowing not only that this is their language, but it's also what is it they like. So if you give somebody tickets to a football game and they hate football, it's really kind of a meaningless reward. So one of the things that one of the folks was talking about in their organization is, how do we get to know your people so you know what their favorite things to do? Do they love going out for pizza with their kids? Do they like movies? Are they a coffee shop person or a bookstore person? What can they do to enjoy things that you could make them meaningful to them? Sometimes it's time off. That, hey, we've known you've done an extraordinary effort. We'd like to give you the afternoon off, or leave work a little early. If you're covering a shift, that's hard to do. But if a manager came in and said, you've really been doing great, let me cover the last 3 hours of your shift and that you get home a little early. To someone, that could be really a key thing. To others, it might be gear, a t-shirt, a notepad, something that is really tangible to them. I want to give you a real-world example of a tangible reward that worked really well for an organization. This is an organization that had about 900 employees. Every Thanksgiving, they arranged for a truck to come, a refrigerated truck, on Monday. And every staff person got their choice of a frozen turkey for Thanksgiving or a 15-pound ham. And they could come by anytime that day or in the evening, and there were staff there, managers, that were greeting people and asking them, did they want a turkey or a ham? And they were giving them out to people. People loved it. They came from all shifts. They'd sometimes have to wait in line, but they'd be sitting there and they enjoyed getting that turkey or the ham. Well, after about 10 years, one of the program managers said, this really isn't very efficient. we could give them a $20 gift card to go to the grocery store and buy their own turkey or ham. And somebody said, well, maybe that's not enough. So they gave everybody a $25 gift card, which was more than they spent on the turkey and the ham. What do you think happened when people got the gift card along with their paycheck instead of having the day to pick up the turkey and the ham? Everybody got pissed off. What? You don't care enough about us to act, you're making us go get our own turkey or ham. And it just blew up in their faces. What they loved is that their managers were there all day, physically giving them this turkey, thanking them for what they were doing, or this ham. So they went right back to it the next year. And they realized it was much more than just the physical thing of the turkey or the ham or the gift card. So when you think about a tangible reward, it is something that's meaningful. Now let me tell you another story that just is very recent. An agency took over another small agency that was going out of business. Served 50 people, had about 140 staff. They absorbed all those 140 staff. They took over the 50 people. Everything went seamless, and they only had a week to pull it off. The residential director of the agency that took all these new people in said, my program managers, there's 25 of them, worked extra hours. I'd like to give them each a thank you from the organization of $25 gift card for everyone. So 20 people times $25, $500. Went to the CFO and said, can we buy 20 $25 gift cards? Realizing those 50 people probably brought $5 million of revenue into the agency a year and taking it over. And the CFO said, we don't have $500 to do that. Just tell them thank you. Now, she hadn't told her staff they were going to get these. But what it meant and how it impacted her was devastating. She thought, we don't care enough about our people to give them a thank you, a tangible gift back to them. So it's one of those things that you need to think about how you do it and what it means to everybody, including the managers who get to say thank you. The fifth area is one that is a little sensitive in the workplace that comes out of this first book, and it's the language of touch. That, again, because of the workplace, it becomes a much more sensitive area, and it talks about it. But a simple high five or a pat on the back or shaking hands to thank people makes a physical connection, and to some people, that's their primary language. They want to feel that physical connection with the person that they work with, that you took time to notice me. So those are the 5 languages: words of affirmation and appreciation, the quality time, the acts of service, the tangible reward, and a touch. And everybody has a primary language and then a secondary language. And I don't know if we have this on a slide. Do we have the link to the survey piece up on a slide? Okay, we're going to send that out in the chat, or we'll put that in there. There's a free survey you could do with your leaders, and they answer these series of questions. And there are no hooks on it. You won't get called by a salesperson asking you for something. But it just asks you, what would you prefer? And it helps you begin thinking about what are your primary words. I did it and found my primary was in words of affirmation. My secondary language was quality time. So as we begin looking at this, how do we learn about each other, and what is it that is going to make people feel appreciated? Probably the landmark study was the one that Gallup did, that 70% of Americans do not feel appreciated in the workforce. what Chapman said, it isn't because their bosses aren't always expressing appreciation, but they're doing it in the wrong way to get through to the folks they're working with. The last story I'll tell you is another great example. One of our subscribers did a very cool thing where they targeted folks that worked on the midnight shift. People that rarely come to meetings, rarely are able to come to staff meetings. So they went around at midnight to every one of their residences, and the program manager had a goodie bag. In it were some homemade cookies, a coupon for a free pizza, some microwave popcorn, and a thank you card. Now, the one thing they realized when they screwed up is the staff got a knock on the door at midnight, and they picked midnight. And the first thing the staff said, look, I'm not sleeping, I'm wide awake, am I in trouble? And they should have given people a heads up. But then they took pictures together, selfies with their staff, and created a video to the music of In the Midnight Hour, and just did this message of appreciation back for staff that talked about how much they appreciated those folks that often didn't get to see people. So that's a really quick overview, and he will give you in the book a lot more great information to begin thinking about this. And we want to tie this back to our culture wheel, to where we think about a culture of retention that values the well-being of our staff, and what those 4 topics are that build that culture are habits, processes, time, and relationships. So as you think about this, and we begin looking at it, what is one new habit you can implement? And you can start small. What is something that you can do that will start reinforcing a culture of retention and appreciation? What do we have in our processes? And a process is a business process. What do we have that promotes sincere appreciation? We have a lot of quality improvement processes where we identify a problem and then we correct it. What is the process we have when we identify success and we appreciate it, as you've been looking at it? Time is one of our big challenges. Everybody tells me across the country, we don't have time. How do we make a 15-minute appointment with ourselves once a week to focus on appreciation, and how we would do that and begin looking at it? You can also then begin thinking about relationships. Who are those people that you want to reach? Who are those 5 new people that started last week that we want to mentor and really know we were impressed with them as we began working through our process of onboarding with them? So we begin, where do we begin? Can you put 15 minutes on your calendar just to begin thinking about a culture of appreciation and retention? You can set an appointment for yourself, just to give yourself 15 minutes to begin thinking, what can I do? And it may be 15 minutes to breathe and appreciate what you've gotten done. Do you ever feel like you run from moment to moment to moment, and the end of the day comes and you haven't had a moment to breathe? So your first 15 minutes, make sure you appreciate yourself and what you're getting done. One of the questions you might think about is, what do you think the last 5 messages staff heard from their supervisor, and how did it make them feel? When we tried this with a customer the other day, they said, gee, I don't want to repeat probably what our supervisor said, because it's always about a problem. How do we change that, and what should the next 5 messages be? What can leaders set as one new positive acknowledgement habit that we could implement with our leadership team? And begin looking at that issue of retention, and how do people feel about being part of us? You know, one of the old sayings is, you might get 100 compliments in a day, and you get 1 negative criticism. Which one do you remember and focus on? Almost always it's the negative. but you had 100 positive comments. How do we get that changed so people really value those positive comments that they're coming in? And so we have DSP Week coming up here in a few weeks, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that and the culture of appreciation that we wanted to share with you and give you a sneak preview of the new video that is just all about this question of touch and how important that is. So, Keisha, will you play that? And then we'll take a little time for questions about your thoughts on this idea of appreciation, and we'll move right into DSP Week. Keisha?
You deserve fist bumps, handshakes, thumbs up, and high fives. Your work helps others find ways to thrive. A handshake might be for a job well done, a gesture of thanks for helping someone. At your job, you wear many hats. A fist bump is a show of congrats. Give a thumbs up to say, hey, you're awesome. You could even get a thumbs up from a possum.
No, really, possums do have thumbs.
Meet a new goal? Well, here's a high five. Thanks for your passion, commitment, and drive. Having you on a team is truly a thrill. Thank you for sharing your talents and skill.
So you can be watching for more from our possum as a guest speaker along the way here in the future too. But any reactions from folks on the idea of the languages of appreciation and how we begin tailoring that and begin to understand what works for our staff and what might be things to try? Any thoughts? Great. Okay. Well, and feel free if you think about this and you want to chat later about it, glad to do it. And please check out the book. It's a great one and a great read to begin thinking about it. We've all done this here, and it's a great way to begin thinking about how those interactions can be more meaningful with everyone. I'm going to switch it now over to Rebecca, who's going to take us through some plans for DSP Week.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Part of the reason that we're doing this conversation now in August, certainly appreciating our staff and teams is something we can do year round, but specifically we're looking ahead to September when we have DSP Appreciation Week. So again, it's great to appreciate staff 365 kind of thing, but in September it's the official week. This year it's September 8th to the 14th, a Sunday to Saturday, for DSP Appreciation Week. So it's often a time when organizations, do particular celebrations or have different words of thanks or giveaways, whatever it might be. And so in bringing up this notion of the five languages of appreciation in the workplace, it's also just to spark your thinking of what are the different ways that you're celebrating and sharing that appreciation. So one tool that we've created that will be passed around in the notes from this call, as well as available on our resources tab, is a flyer to consider sending out to families and the folks in your community who receive services from you. Keisha's scrolling to it now. Again, myquillo.com/resources. And when you check out this tool, it's a template for, hey families, in case you didn't know, DSP Appreciation Week is coming up. There's a spot in the yellow where you can personalize it to your organization. You can add your logo down in the bottom and certainly, change the pictures or the language to suit your needs. But just one idea, if you're sending out any communications to your families, as a reminder for, hey, just so you know this is going on. We're not asking or encouraging that it becomes this, that it's a monetary challenge or anything. It's really just to give some extra words of appreciation, maybe a little note that week. So feel free to use this tool if you find it helpful, or use this idea and run with it if there's another approach that your team wants to take. So, and again, that's available to download off the website. You also got a sneak peek of the possum video. We've got some other new videos that are scheduled and ready to go out for DSP Appreciation Week. Our September calendar for Daily Focus will also be circulated with the notes as well as in the resources file. So you can see what we've got lined up for the week of DSP Appreciation Week as well as all month long. We have a video on Labor Day, for example, just giving a thanks to the folks who are working on a day that's often a day off for a lot of people, just a shout out to those people who might still be on, on shift for those days. So lots coming up in September. So for DSP Appreciation Week, we certainly encourage you to create your own local content. And that continues to be super exciting for folks to see people and stories that they recognize and that are close to home, especially as you're looking at celebrating the DSPs, whether it's something you create on your own or use some of the templates that are available on the resources file or the resources webpage. Again, other ways to download and create those videos. Kisa and I are always available too to help with creating content, whether it's brainstorming or troubleshooting any technical trouble you might come across. So definitely be in touch. I'll jot our emails in the chat box in just a moment. So yeah, keep an eye out for those videos and feel free to, set your own daily focus for that week if you, want to get your own messages out. So that's what we've have going on our end. I'd love to hear from anyone on the call about what else, if anything, your organization has planned for that week, or if it's something you've done in the past or something you're looking forward to this year. Any thoughts from the group?
Yeah, we also annual gifts for every employee. It's been kind of hard because they're out in the field to get them to, how do we get the gift without sending out 250 things in the mail for postage. So we've done different things throughout the years. A lot of people really like t-shirts with our logo and our catchphrase on it. They find a lot of pride in that. This year we're doing a water bottle with that catchphrase, so they'll have to come in and get it. Mm-hmm. And then for managers, we're giving them all jackets with our logo on it for a professional look out in the community, and they're really excited about that too.
That's great. Can I ask, what is your catchphrase up at CSC?
CLC's catchphrase is "Live your best life."
Wonderful. That's cool. I like that. So, excuse me, CLC. That's great. So, Andrew or David, anything to add or still in the works?
So it's, in our role at the Center for Start Services, we don't supervise any DSPs directly.
Right.
But we have a responsibility in making sure that we do something to recognize the important work of DSPs within the START network and outside of the START network. So we really just have to, I think this is just prompting me to make sure it's on our radar so that we can plan something for sure.
Awesome. Well, and as we've talked about, some of these changes in culture and appreciation, they do take time and investment, whether it's financial or just planning ahead for these sorts of things. But some things can also be pretty quick and straightforward. So if you don't already, either as an organization or individually, you can also consider following Quillo on social media, on our Facebook page and whatnot. Throughout the week of DSP Appreciation Week, we'll have posts and comments and videos and whatnot. It's an easy thing to just share it. So, and I'm not saying that to, share Quillo's page. It's more just a message that's ready for you, and you can pass it along to your networks if that's a space where your DSPs or family members engage. So, keep an eye out for little things like that too that can be a straightforward but still meaningful way to pass along those words of encouragement. So, any other thoughts?
One thing you said, Andrea, that triggered another thought. And again, the book it's a great read. It's an easy read, but a really thoughtful book. And he said, one of the things we have to guard against in organizational relationships is the yes, but we tried that once. That when you talk about doing the t-shirts, Jenny, I don't know how many times I've seen people just very proudly wearing t-shirts from an organization they work for. That it is something that people feel really good about and doing. It's not just a shirt. Some people may just be another shirt in the drawer, but if you do it once and people said, well, I didn't see many of my people wearing it. It takes time to build that culture, and one of the things he said is if you want to really work on the relationship, you measure it over a long period of time. Not one thing that you're going to do that immediately changes things 180 degrees. He also said you can ruin a relationship really quickly, but building it up and sustaining it is a long-term plan. So you may try something and then adapt it and continue to work on it, and begin thinking about that in some ways that make sense. And every organization is a little bit different, and how people see that is a little bit different. But great idea, Jenny. Love to see what the results are.
Wonderful. Well, any other thoughts? Well, as we get as we start wrapping up, thank you for the time today. If I was able to give a handshake to everybody through the screen, I would, but different ways to say thanks. We look forward to connecting with everybody in September. The next Quillo Nation call will be Thursday, September 19th. So it'll be just after DSP Appreciation Week. So I'd love to hear, what folks ended up doing that week. By all means, if you have questions ahead of time or just want help brainstorming some other ways that you can prepare for that week, feel free to reach out to anyone on the Quillo team. Any other thoughts from Quillo colleagues or Quillo Nation? Awesome. Well, great. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for joining the call today. Stu will have the notes out and links and resources and everything in the next day or so, and look forward to chatting with you in September.
Thank you.
So, thanks, everybody.
Great. Bye,
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye
All right.
now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.